have you learned during this experiment? To fall asleep to the sound of my voice? Did you learn to fall asleep to me counting 1, 2, 3, 4? No. Let me take some notes on whatever it is that you've learned. Do you mind? Did you learn to fall asleep to the sound of tapping, 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 or perhaps whispering while touching your head very, very, very lightly? What is it that you learned to fall asleep to during the run of this experiment? It's very important that I understand your brain, because that's what the experiment is all about. It's very important that I understand exactly what makes your brain squish and perhaps crunch. It's very important. I suspect you did learn to fall asleep to the sound of my voice. I suspect you learned that quite early on, and that you only learned it accidentally, so you're not taking it into account. No one taught you to fall asleep to the sound of my voice now, did they? But you've fallen asleep to the sound of my voice so very often. So now it's quite easy to fall asleep to the sound of my voice or my whispers, or even the particular way I tap, tap, even the particular way that your brain crunches, crunch, 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 crunches. Do you suspect that you've learned to fall asleep to the sound of my voice during the run of this experiment? Or am I being presumptive? Scientists are not supposed to be presumptive. But I think that you've learned to fall asleep to the sound of my voice 1,000,000 times. Because every time that you do fall asleep to the sound of my voice, you learn it. You learn to do it a little bit better next time. You learn to let my voice penetrate into your brain. You learn to let my voice sink into the innermost parts of your cerebral experience. This is a model of your brain. As you can see, your brain has 2 hemispheres and many parts. As you can see, there's the cotton candy part of your brain, the mustard, the swamp, the throne room. There is the ocean, the snail, the river, and the other mustard. A lot of people forget about the other mustard. They only think about this mustard, but you can't forget the other mustard. Or heart. The temporal lobe. Your temporal lobe is right here. That's where your temporal lobe is. And I can tell it's getting pretty sleepy. Do you think you've learned to fall asleep to the sound of my voice? Is it a sort of placebo? Placebo. Kind of like giving your shoulders a placebo. Massage, massage, massage. Digging into the tension at the base of your neck. So tired from looking down and looking up and looking straight and wishing you were just rid of that damn head. You're probably never gonna get rid of your head, I'm afraid. That's not how this experiment ends. This experiment ends in you sleeping. Look at my hands. Look at my hands. Do you remember what that's supposed to do? It's supposed to put you to sleep. It's supposed to put you to sleep, but you might have forgotten. Sometimes people forget what's supposed to put them to sleep. If you fall asleep to the sound of my voice, you get this tiny rose. And if you get this tiny rose, you fall asleep to the sound of my voice. Wouldn't you like to fall asleep to the sound of my voice and get this tiny rose so that you can fall asleep to the sound of my voice? Because if you got this tiny rose, you'd be able to fall asleep to just the sound of my voice. You'd be able to fall asleep. Do you see the little rose? Don't you see how if you had it, you would just sleep to the sound of my voice? I want you to look at the little rose and remember it. Because if you forget it, then you might forget how important it is to fall asleep to the sound of my voice. You might forget how important it is to fall asleep to the sound of my voice. And then you would be awake forever, and then you would drive yourself crazy. Loco. So you have to remember the rose. You have to remember the rose. Remember the rose. And then if you forget the rose, that probably means that you've already fallen asleep to the sound of my voice. And so it's okay. If you forget the rose, it probably means that you've already fallen asleep to the sound of my voice. And then you can slide like an ice skater. Ice skating in your dreams. Like an ice skater. Because you've fallen asleep to the sound of my voice. Or the sound of my teeth eating the tiny rose that is the reward for you falling asleep to the sound of my voice. That's a pretty good sound. Almost as good as the sound of my voice for falling asleep to. What have you learned during this experiment? I'm taking notes. Have you learned to fall asleep to the sound of my voice? Have you learned to fall asleep yet to the sound of my voice? Are you just pretending to learn to fall asleep to the sound of my voice? Are you just imagining that you're learning to fall asleep to the sound of my voice, and how nice it would be if you learned to fall asleep to the sound of my voice? How nice it would be if you could just hear the sound of my voice and your brain would squish and crunch and fall into a deep slumber, your body letting go, your mind letting go, your spirit being elevated to the realm of dreams. The experiment depends upon you dreaming to the sound of my voice. The experiment is for your own good. It's for your self-discovery, see? It's just to discover whether or not you can fall asleep to the sound Can you? If you can't, we can run the experiment again. We can, wind back the clock to make sure that you can fall asleep to the sound of my voice. All it would take is some brushing on the side of your head. Whenever you were very tired, we would wait until you were very, very tired. We would give you a full day of exercise and food and delightful experiences like watching all of the Lord of the Rings movies, back to back extended editions, and then you would be so tired. And then no more Lord of the Rings, it'd be the sound of my voice. It would be the sound of my voice in many contexts and in many ways. I might even be British, or I might be from Minnesota, or Chicago. Where would you like me to be from? I'd come from the sleepiest place in your brain. I'd make voice most relaxing type of accent I would have, and this would be the first time we'd make you fall asleep to the sound of my voice, and then we would be more creative next time. We'd make you fall asleep. If I were to be instead of Russian, I would perhaps be English. I would perhaps be English, and then you'd fall fast asleep to an English sound of my voice, and you'd feel my hand on your hair, brushing, scratchy, comb me, scratchy, comb me, scratchy, comb me. I touch your eyes and your nose. Otherwise, the experiment would get weirder and weirder and weirder, because I'd have to start selling soaps in order to prove that you can fall asleep to the sound of my voice, in order to get funding. so we would have to do the experiment at least once where I also sold you cheeky soap. It would go something like this. I would say, cheeky soap is all natural soap made by gamers and for gamers, and it uses ingredients that are good for your skin like shea butter and jojoba oil. Can you say that for me? Just repeat it. Just repeat it. Very good. That's shea butter and jojoba oil, and it makes your skin soft and smooth. And also, it has characters on it. Don't you want soap that has I like solo leveling. I think this anime's, or not an anime. I know it is an anime. It's Korean, but it's good. It's very, what do you call it? I know it's a manhwa, but is it still called, it's not called an anime, is it? Is it called something else? Whatever. This is why I'm not ready to run the experiment this way yet. I would take some preparation, okay? But anyway, I do actually really like this anime, and these soaps. I haven't watched Bleach, but it's pretty popular, and they make special edition soaps for nerds that watch Solo Leveling and Bleach and Frieren and One Piece and all those things and more other things, and they're really good. So you can use the code SLEEPY at checkout to get 10% off a starter pack. Treat your skin and do that. They also make deodorant now, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and also I really like their packaging. Not just because it looks nice, but because it sounds so very nice. It's perfect for this experiment. Let me show you closer upper. These are all their soaps. This one is one of my favoriteest soaps they've ever released. I've smelled all their soaps, y'all. I've smelled so many cheeky soaps, and I have so many smells now in my brain. I love this soap. I asked for this one again, okay? That's how good it is. I really like the way it smells. But the other ones are probably a little bit more masculine, if that's what you're going for. I feel like this one was actually kind of neutral, but I can't remember. But this one is definitely a little more sweet. A little bit more sweet, desserty. Anyway, I'm going on too long. People are going to be mad at me. No, everyone wants me to run the experiment with accents and not selling soap. But that's what you have to do in an experiment. You have to try things different ways sometimes. So have you fallen asleep yet? And if you have fallen asleep, did you learn to fall asleep within a moment? Did you learn to fall asleep within a moment? Did you learn to fall asleep within a moment? Did you learn to sound your voice? Did you learn to fall asleep within a moment? I think you're falling asleep because you're starting to hear things a little crazy, a little weird. You're starting to hear things a little weird. But you're still busy. You're so fast. You learned. Good. Let's see if you remember next time.